Wow. I didn't say the right things.
Well, we have a lot of questions to get through today. Some of them are really great. Do you want to lead us off, Zoe?
Yeah, I think, since I wrote some notes down for my answers, it would be best if you asked the questions.
Okay.
And then, Drew, I believe, is Kylie coming? Kylie's jumping on.
Kristen's not.
Kristen's not.
She's off today. All right, let's start with rest days. How do you know when to take an extra rest day?
So I have a checklist that I really like to kind of have my athletes mentally run through if they're feeling like they might really need a rest day. Some of them are kind of more black and white questions to ask yourself, and some of them are a bit more nuanced and require a higher level of kind of self-awareness and an understanding of where you're at on any given day. So one of the big ones is ask yourself, are you sick? If you're sick and you're experiencing any symptoms below the neck, don't run. That is black and white. Like, don't try to run it off. That has never once helped anyone get over a sickness better. You're decreasing your, ability to mount a robust immune response. And you could be prolonging sickness. And since you're experiencing systemic stress, you're going to be upping your chance for injury. So it's kind of a lose-lose scenario if you try to run through sickness. If you feel sick, take an extra rest day. Next question. Are you tired? A little bit of fatigue is normal, but if you're feeling really, really consistently low energy for a long period of time, I would say multiple days in a row, 2-3 days in a row, something deeper could be going on, like iron deficiency, really high stress levels, and we need to take care of that outside of training. Those things can spiral if left unchecked into overtraining syndrome, and persistent fatigue is basically just a sign that your lifestyle cannot support training, and we need to make some kind of change, whether it's in lifestyle or training. Don't push through chronic tiredness. That has never you can't white knuckle your way out of fatigue, right? You can't will it away. You need to basically, once you've identified the issue, you need to respond to it in the way it deserves to be responded to. Next question I have my athletes ask themselves is, have you been eating enough? If not, don't run. If you just, if you had a big presentation, you got up early, you had coffee for breakfast, you skipped lunch, I do not want you putting on running shoes that day. I want you to dig into a giant tub of enchilada and have zero regrets about skipping that run. Again, that's one of those things, like, it's always better. Like, if you only have a certain amount of time, you're like, should I make up my lunch or should I try to make up my run? Make up that lunch. Running when you're in a calorie deficiency will mean that you have a less quality workout and you're upping your risk for injury. Again, that's kind of a lose-lose scenario. So make sure that the puzzle pieces of your day prioritize your ability to fit in getting in the calories that you need. If you decide to get out the door and you're kind of plodding along, if pain or any kind of discomfort that you've been experiencing, a niggle, starts to get worse while running, pause the watch and walk it home. If symptoms get worse while you're out there, definitely don't keep running. Don't run if you're experiencing discomfort walking. I think, a lot of people, myself included, have fallen into that logical flaw of like, oh, maybe if I run, it'll loosen up. Historically, no, it does not. Unless there is some specific reason that you need to maintain a certain range of, unless you have a PT or a medical professional give you specific clearance to work through discomfort in that mode. If you don't feel good walking, you're not going to feel good running. Please don't try it. Here's the kind of tough one. Does the thought of running make you deeply unhappy? This is a really challenging question to answer consistently and honestly, because it requires a really high level of self-awareness. If you're someone who doesn't typically struggle with motivation and you have a day where your brain is just like, oh, I would rather do anything besides run, sometimes it can be really, really important to honor that. If you're not someone that typically struggles with motivation, you're really consistent, you're dialed in your training, your nutrition, your sleep, things are, falling in place, but like mentally you just have one day where you're like, it's just not doesn't feel good. It's not that I don't have time. It's just that I really don't want to. it can be really important to honor that, because if you're, again, typically a really motivated person and you just have a day where you're not feeling it, that could really be your body trying to just say like, stop, we need to cover, we need to cover sleep base, we need to cover a nutrition base. Like that can kind of be the first warning signal that something deeper might be going on. And a lot of times just by honoring it the first time it pops up, you can avoid kind of falling into a black hole of fatigue and other symptoms. So just listening to that the first time it pops up can be really, really critical if you're typically a motivated person. If you're someone that struggles with consistency, this one's a harder one to answer, because like, another thing is if we only ran on the days where we felt 100% stoked about running, like probably not that many of us would run very consistently, right? Like there are going to be days where maybe mentally you're not 100% amped on getting out the door and you just kind of have to, fake it till you make it, but you never want to push through underlying chronic symptoms, any kind of like, you don't want to be pushing through a bad place mentally for a long time. If your heart and soul aren't in the running thing for a little period of time, that's okay. That's normal. Pushing through it typically won't make it worse, but sometimes trying to push through will mean you'll have to take a bigger break, right? Like what our ideal is in training is to keep you training consistently for the longest time possible, because that's how actual improvement happens. So sometimes taking a shorter break, like maybe, you have a really low motivation day, take 3 days off, come back at it that next week, ready to rock and roll. That way, if you don't push through a couple days of having really, really low motivation, and then you like go into full blown burnout or overtraining, that's what we're really trying to avoid. I'd love to know if Drew or Kylie have anything else that they like to, any kind of things that they think of in their own training or work with their athletes on in terms of when to know if you need to take a bonus rest day.
I feel like you've covered that really thoroughly. I think I just want to add that it's important for athletes to communicate effectively with their coaches. I know the 4-point check-in and discussion is kind of thorough in itself, but the discussion box in your training log is vital in letting us know how you feel. So the more descriptive you can be, the more open and honest you can be with us, the better we're able to tailor your program to suit those needs. We will never, like, if you're like, well, I'm stressed out, I don't feel good, I think I need a day off. None of us are going to say, well, sorry, you need to get out there and run anyway, right? We're going to support you, but we just need to know. So please be open and honest and let us help you.
Yeah, I always like to joke with TJ that like if I had a dollar for every time the first time I see the word burnout is like when someone quits, like I'd have a couple dollars at least, right? Like these things are preventative. If the first time I hear about an injury is when you're at the when you have to go get an MRI, that's a breakdown in communication. We don't make these logs as a place of judgment and criticism for us to be like, oh, you missed your log, shame storm, shame storm. We build these logs so that we can try to prevent getting to that point. So if you have a run that doesn't, like, we're not going to be upset and angry with you if you go have a run and it doesn't feel good and you don't like it. Like there is no pressure to pop in and like be, Chris Traeger and just like love life, love running all the time. That's not what it's for.
I find that funny because often, like yesterday, we were up at 4 a.m. checking logs to make sure that athletes had feedback. And I was doing that because I was going to be out of the office all day. And we don't do that for you guys not to go in and look at our feedback before you run. That's one of my biggest things around rest is when I advise an athlete to take extra rest and they didn't go in the log and check my feedback before their next run, even though they knew and they reiterated to me that they had something going on, whether it was like mental, emotional, or physical. Maybe it was being sick. That really kind of like brings my blood pressure up because we don't go into the logs and give you guys important feedback for you to ignore it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just checking a box. Like we adapt, like the plan is not set in stone. We adapt it as we go, right? Like if I have an athlete say they felt excessively fatigued, I'm not going to say, well, good luck with 10 miles tomorrow. I'm going to say, Okay, let's rest or do 30 minutes, right? Like, let's take some pressure off. Let's adapt the training plan so that it fits your immediate needs, not so that you feel like you have to consistently rise to a bar that's inappropriate for you. That would be bad coaching.
Yeah.
Good coaching is flexible coaching.
I think the other thing that maybe this kind of glossed over, but taking a mental health rest day is just as important as taking a physical health rest day. And I don't think that necessarily means, lack of motivation. If you're resting because of lack of motivation, that's fine. My general rule is after 3 days of an athlete feeling lack of motivation, I push the athlete to run anyways to try to facilitate a change. But if you're having, a really stressful day at work, or, dealing with a loss in your family, or any number of things that might be messing with you mentally and emotionally, that can be cause for an extra rest day. Particularly when, Zoe mentioned something like burnout. As coaches, we see this all the time. An athlete emails us, I'm quitting, I'm burned out. And it's like, oh, okay, you haven't really mentioned any of these things in the training log over the last, 3 or 4 months that you've been working with us. Like, should we unpack this a little bit? Oh, I've been forcing all my runs and I didn't want to tell you.
We're
Okay,
people. Like,
yeah.
we are not special. Like, we struggle with burnout. We struggle with motivation. Like, these are all things that we have worked through in our own lives. We do not expect that any person on our team would not struggle with that.
Yeah, totally.
Bring all your weird feelings, bring all those hard feelings, whatever comes up in your run, like, we're there for it. We're not there to just like validate the good days and then like, oh, this person had it, that's not what it's for. We're there for all the days. We're there to make it respond to what your life actually feels like. Because we've seen all of it. We've felt most of it, like there is nothing you can say or experience at this point that is going to be like that weird for us.
It's nothing that hasn't gone down in the 400 square feet of our apartment.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Like, we love running and we've experienced like every tough emotion that comes up around it. Like, we're there for that. We're there to help you navigate it. We're not just there to apply extra pressure, to your life. We're there to help lift some of it, hopefully.
I think the point, to all of this is that when you, and following up with what Drew said, is when you're reiterating how you feel in the training log, it gives the coaches a chance to help you get ahead of whatever you're experiencing, so you can avoid some of the pitfalls that maybe we've dealt with or we've seen in other athletes. And to go back to that burnout thing, very prevalent in winter. And many of you guys on this call right now trained your butts off over winter. And I'm sure there were days where you forced yourself to go out and to train, to stay consistent, even though you may not have wanted to for a variety of different reasons. I think it's important, at least with my athletes, that I keep an eye on how many runs are being like really manufactured. Like, as athletes, yes, we need to manufacture our runs. We have to manufacture joy out there sometimes, especially in the training process. Not every day is going to feel amazing. But if we're stacking a lot of days like that on top of each other, that is a surefire way to burn yourself out. And as a coach, I really like athletes to take, a couple mental health days instead of forcing that run. Try to find the joy after a few days later, when people feel more refreshed, because when you're going to the mental and emotional well to finish a run, especially just in a folding laundry kind of like easy run with a few strides or something, that's that can take its toll over many weeks. So let's be careful of that and consider that as part of taking extra rest too.
Yeah.
Kylie, did you want to throw some nutritional knowledge on this rest
or just
topic?
Human knowledge, again, like, just because we're coaches doesn't mean we don't.
Well, I walked in a few minutes late, so I don't know what you covered at the beginning, but I kind of like to err on the side of caution with my athletes, and I do pay close attention to the 4-point daily check-in. And if there's any kind of like little niggle, then I will like probably over communicate with my athletes in regards to being like, hey, like, what are your thoughts on pulling back for a day? Or we could like switch something up with the long run, and just like trying to really accommodate that if the communication is there, like you guys are saying. If it's not there, then we're like left guessing what is going on. And so, if something really goes south, we can't really do much if, if a week later you're like, oh yeah, I have a stress fracture or something, so, so I was, just adding that piece for me is really huge with my athletes. And then I kind of err on the side of caution with things. And like, if, especially like with life stress too, if somebody has like big work week or tests coming up or something, I might like back the mileage down a little bit if I know those sorts of things, just to kind of allow for people to get through the tough couple of days or tough week. And then stressing of course, I'm going to stress the nutrition piece. So just trying to keep yourself on a regular eating, hydration, sleep pattern too. Like I know with stress, sometimes it can get hard to get in enough sleep. But that's where kind of like planning and kind of sticking to setting those boundaries and stuff can be helpful, I think, in order to prevent getting yourself in a hole. I'm working on that myself. So
there's a lot. I think there's a lot to unpack in this one question, and even more comes to mind for me with kind of trying to develop an understanding around your personal habits. If you're involved in the training process for long enough, you can sort of start to anticipate what your body feedback means. So if you're feeling this, you can generally say, okay, this might lead to this, and that's going to help you over time make better decisions about your training and take more ownership around this. So if you're not somebody who is really good at maybe describing how you feel in the training log, I would recommend working on that, because that process for you can be very revealing in a number of ways.
And ask yourself why it's hard to be honest in the log, right? Like, is there some sort of mismatch in communication? Are you putting pressure on yourself to be a certain person or runner that you're just not? We want you to be able to show up in an authentic and honest way in the logs, not just because it's good for your mental health, but it's absolutely the only way that we can accurately and effectively coach you. And again, there's just no pressure to be like Little Miss Sunshine in the logs. Like, we're there for, be kind when you can.
My thing is be kind to yourself in the training log.
Yeah.
I don't like my athletes using the training log to like verbally abuse themselves.
Yeah, that's not
tolerance.
That's not tolerated
On that.
It's worked through.
Other than that, everything's pretty good.
Through. Yeah.
It's worked through. Yes.
But like, you don't have to, it's not going to hurt our feelings if you show up and you're like, I hated running today. Like, that's fine. We've said the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's no expectation to be or say a certain thing ever. It's a safe place and a brave place for you to be yourself.
I could talk more. We have a rest day call, I think.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys should look into that if you haven't listened to it yet. But I think over 80 people listened to that one. So maybe you guys already know this stuff. All right. This is a great question. How do you work through pre-race anxiety?
Oh man, I love this question because I think it's something I struggle with pretty dang hard. A lot comes up for me around racing because it's a space where I feel like super vulnerable. It forces me to confront like basically every insecurity I have about myself as a person. And then I get to like, do it in front of a bunch of people. And then my results are on the internet. It's such an excellent, like perfect storm of insecurity, which means it's very fertile ground for self-improvement and growth. I don't like the word self-improvement, growth. I'm already great. In a like, not in a self-aggrandizing way, in the way that we all have innate worth, to be clear. So, for me, it's like a thing that has really helped me make peace with the feelings and like physical sensations that come up around races is just realizing that a lot of that is just innate biology, right? Like your body is going to mount a physiological stress response. That's normal. That's just biology doing its thing, and not like freaking out whenever I notice that I'm stressed. Cause like you can kind of get into an anxiety spiral of being like, oh my God, I'm anxious. Like, oh my God, that makes me even more anxious. What if I am out of control? What if I don't race well because like mentally I'm like all over the place. Oh my God, I can't eat, I can't sleep. Oh my God, like that just makes things worse. So being able to say like, oh yeah, totally, my body is like mounting a stress response. That's good. That means things are firing on all cylinders. How can I reframe it so it's a bit more productive? Like, I recognize that this is happening in my body. I'm thinking these things and I'm feeling this way. Instead of just putting it in the anxiety box, I can recognize like, oh, this is a little bit of excitement too, right? Like, I'm nervous and excited to like push my, apply my training and go celebrate it on a race course with fellow competitors. Like, kind of reframe it from just like being all bad to being like, oh, this is good. Like, this means I'm invested emotionally. This means I care. It means I'm able to show up in an authentic and vulnerable way in this competition. Because if you felt nothing, that would be the really frightening thing, right? So being able to neutrally recognize and reframe it is really helpful for me. I think that, the caveat to that is like, if your body is in full flight or fight, flight, or freeze mode, like for weeks leading up to the race, that's not great. You don't want to be living in, like, you don't want your, sympathetic nervous system to just be like, for days and days and days on end, because that's going to really not positively impact your ability to taper, sleep, eat. So this is where I really dig into a lot of breathing exercises. I'm someone who, like, a big anxiety symptom I experience is dysregulated breathing. So being able to just tap into some breath work, which sounds like so hippy dippy, but is just like absolute, like, if you can, stress or calm, if you can trick your body into thinking it's calm, it will actually be calm. So I really like box breathing, a little bit of meditation, just making sure that I am trying to put things back in alignment and I'm not dysregulated for long periods of time. Also, just the more you race and the more you're forced to taper, tapering feels so, like, I've never had an athlete be like, oh yeah, tapering feels excellent and my brain feels awesome, my body feels good. Like, tapering makes people not feel that great typically until about race day. That's normal. The more you work through it, the more like okay it will feel. You'll be like, okay, like, it's pretty normal for me to become a little too in my body maybe leading up to races. I know when I, dramatically reduce my volume, I'll start to kind of like pay a little maybe too much attention to, like, is my knee tight? Is it clicking? Is it tight? Is that a stress fracture? What's happening? And it's never a stress fracture. So like doing things like body scan meditations have been really helpful for me. Again, learning to re-regulate that system and just knowing that, like, that's kind of what happens every time. And the more you can practice working through it, the less like scary it is when it comes up. And then practicing positive self-talk, telling myself you're not an anxious person, you're an excited and in control person, and reframing the narrative that I'm telling myself. Making sure I don't engage in self, like, destructive behaviors like scrolling competitor Stravas, getting on ultra sign up, obsessing about my own training, just being like really trying to, when my brain wants to latch onto something in that arena, giving it something else better to do, starting a new book, starting a new project, doing new recipes, finding novel ways to engage my brain that don't involve things that could like be, harmful narratives. And then just really focusing on my pre-race routine. Like, sometimes it's really nice to, again, give your brain something else to think about rather than maybe more negative nervous things, being like laying out your gels, labeling Ziploc bags, packing, making sure that your kit is dialed, doing that without like becoming hyper focused and obsessive about it, because that's not very healthy either. You want to have like the correct amount of attachment to the, logistical side of your race. Again, being prepared without overthinking and obsessing. The moment at which it becomes, stop when it becomes counterproductive.
Wow, Zoe, there was a lot of really good information there and extremely thorough. I would say, guys, if you are having a lot of anxious thoughts about your race and that's taking place more than a few days ahead of the event, let's say more than 5 days ahead of the event, you may need to unpack a little of that with a professional, because although these races are important, we assign a lot of meaning to them. I personally think that might be a red flag. Like, we might be putting that race on too much of a pedestal.
Might be attaching
it could be
self-worth to it.
Could be really important to talk with somebody who can give more, a greater depth to what we just mentioned here, or something about unpacking that, because these are just races. The way that I frame this stuff, regardless of whether it's a race, a B race, or a C race, is the race is really just a big training day. It's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity for celebration. But honestly, like almost every single race ends up being the impetus for something else or for further growth later. So to frame it as anything but a big training day sometimes would make it overwhelming for me. Um, so I just look at it as a big training day. That really helps me a lot. We wrote a couple blog posts and did a talk on stress. One of the blog posts, if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, it's on reframing stress. So the way that we react to that anxiety and those feelings, Zoe mentions like her dysregulated breathing sometimes around anxiety. Those are all signs that your body is revving up for something that you feel is important to you, and that's a really great thing. And then if you take that one step further and reorient the way that you're framing that stress, instead of saying I'm nervous, just telling yourself my body is priming for this event. My body is priming for this event. Use some kind of affirmation to help you switch that to a positive, switch that feeling to something positive, that sensation to something positive. That really helps you perform much better and compartmentalize that stress. If you grab that stress and say, I'm nervous, I'm going to do bad. I'm nervous, I'm going to do bad. All sorts of biological things happen within your body. Again, read the blog post. But one of the big things that happens is your blood vessels restrict themselves as a result of that. And so obviously before a big event, you don't really want your blood vessels to be restricted. You want them to be nice and open. The flow and circulation of blood throughout the body is vital. So if you just switch your thinking around that, switch to a positive affirmation, that can really help to reverse that stress and use that stress for good, for preparing you for that big event, which ideally you're thinking about as just another big training day or something like that. You're framing it in a way that makes sense with a long-term perspective, where you're not putting so much emphasis on one performance. Yeah, and gosh, if I would really, again, I think I would really recommend if you're really over worried about one of these events, think about working with a counselor or therapist.
Or even, I think sometimes when we just have weird, dark thought, again, professional help, awesome, highly recommend. But sometimes even just saying some of your, like we talked with Sarah, airing out, the dirty laundry thoughts, being like, I'm really scared that I'm going to do bad in this race because because I'm not a good runner. I'm not a good athlete. Like speaking those aloud to someone that loves you, even just kind of shining a light on that can take away some of the dark, scary thoughts power. Just kind of putting them out in the open can help expose logical flaws.
I just, with some athletes that we've been working with for, many years, I think that sometimes these patterns of anxiety thinking around races just continue to come up. And taking, maybe more specific action can really help to make a big difference. Like, yes, use the log to unpack some of that stuff. Your coaches, we're running coaches. We can just support you and give you positive feedback, and give you a space to kind of put those thoughts on paper. But, we can't necessarily help you get to the deeper causes of some of that thinking. But we want you to have great race experiences, great adventures. So for some athletes, I think it can actually be really helpful to work with like a mental toughness coach or a therapist on some of these things.
Yeah, I know when I kind of first got into racing, I used to approach every race with this like, whatever, I'm just here to have fun mentality. And that was my way of protecting myself from being really vulnerable and expressing my goals out loud, right? So like no matter what happened, I could just walk away being like, oh, I didn't have any goals. So like whatever happened, fine. I wasn't really being brave.
We actually see that a lot with athletes, like not wanting to put themselves out there.
Yeah. And that's one form of kind of like mental self-protection. And then as I progressed in my training, I started engaging in a new and exciting form of mental self-protection, which was like overemphasizing things, like putting things way too much on a pedestal. and like really attaching too much of my self-worth to it and like having too rigid of goals. And I think it's all about finding that in between where you're like, it's okay for me to invest. It's okay for me to be nervous and excited and passionate about this thing. It's okay for me to pick goals that I might fail at. Like, that's good. That is part of growth and the process. If you never fall short of your goals, you're not setting very good goals. If you always fall short of your goals, also not very good goals, right? And that, you know, these are things that you can only figure out after years and years and years of engaging with the process, right? This is not the kind of self-discovery that happens over one season of running. It is the process of a lifetime. And so working with yourself on identifying like, okay, here's how I feel about what's going on. Why might I actually be protecting myself from being truly vulnerable and brave in this process?
Yeah, awesome. I don't know if any of the other coaches want to chime in a little bit.
Well, just real quick, again, you guys very thorough. I love that. But something that I do for myself pre-race, because I do struggle with a lot of anxiety before more important races, is kind of like the night before, the couple days before, taking time to sit by myself in a quiet room, close my eyes, and just kind of go step by step through the event. Like, what is the start line going to look like? There's going to be a lot of people there. It's going to be like the temperature is going to be here, and kind of go through every little bit. Like, this is how the first 5K, the first 10K, the first, 20 miles, whatever it is. And just kind of go step by step, imagining how it goes, so that when I get there the morning of and the race starts, I don't feel like I'm caught off guard. It's kind of like I'm expecting this to happen, and it brings me down from that anxiety, because I'm more, I guess it's like I'm prepared mentally for what was going to take place, and that seems to help a lot too.
The mental preparation and visualization process is vital for athletes. That's something that I have almost every single one of my athletes do in the week before a race, is to even work through mentally in your mind some of those challenges that they think might occur on race day, so you can just get a feel for how you're going to react to those things, and visualize yourself reacting positively. I think that can really help. You get that feeling of, oh, I've already worked through this, when you end up at that space in a race. That's something that a lot of really successful, high achieving athletes do. And people in life too, before big business meetings, before big life events, that visualization process, spending time with that, working through it before you go out and actually do it, it really helps. Yeah, nice, great tip, Drew. Kylie.
Of course, I'm going to go into the nutrition side of things, but in general, I think it's good to practice like what your routine is going to be in your training for race day in regards to nutrition, like pre-race and then during the race. And then, you can outline your nutrition plan and write it out for yourself so you feel prepared. So just like making sure that you have all of those like extraneous things that you can kind of like organize and control, like done ahead of time before like the day before. So then you're not stressing last minute about, your nutrition or the shoelace on your shoe or something, like figuring out all of those things ahead of time versus the day before, I think is a good way to kind of reduce stress as well.
Yeah,
totally. James, nice reframing tip, by the way, reframing that pre-race jitters and anxiety as excitement. Again, reframing that as a positive thing. Excitement is something that is going to help you perform well. That is going to biologically change the way that your body is reacting to that stress. Again, the new science of stress is really interesting. I recommend that you guys read our blog post on that we put out in January or February. Very interesting stuff there. I think that at least has really affected the way that I think about stress and stress management, especially pre-race jitters and all of that stuff, which is nothing new to me. Happens to me at every race.
I feel like, our stress baselines are just different. And so that gave us like very different understandings of how we process stress. Like for me, my stress baseline is, I'm trying to always bring it down, but it's like a little higher than I would like.
You're always at almost full.
I know. It's like I live life like the day before a race. Like that's just what it feels like sometimes. So when a race happens, I'm like, this is great. I can be stressed about like something new and different. It's not just like about being a person. Whereas TJ, much different stress baseline. Therefore, the gap between his, you know, where he's living life and where his pre-race stress happens, like it's a much bigger gap. And so I think sometimes you struggled with like bridging that, you know,
totally.
and then once you were able to really understand that, like, oh, this is like, this stress can be really positive and productive if I understand it the right way, was a huge breakthrough for you.
Oh yeah, God, I had to like work through that for several weeks before I really understood how to make it work. And still, even sometimes I feel like you have to be careful with it, you know, with any kind of stress, it can be harmful. So if you're not resting enough and you're experiencing a lot of acute stress, any reframing of that stress to help you work through it or to stay more productive might not necessarily be productive in the long run.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, we'll take everything with a grain of salt. If you want to compartmentalize your stress and use it for a great race performance, you certainly can, and your body will respond well to it. But to a certain point, if your stress bucket is already full, you have to find ways, you have to have a lot of tools for bringing that stress down. So that way, any stress that you do have and reframe in a positive way actually does help elicit growth rather than blow-ups and breakdowns, which are the worst, at least for me. I hate it.
Not that great. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, yeah, check out that blog post. Very interesting stuff. At least I thought so.
Yeah.
As a person who feels kind of stress adverse and I don't like stress. I like to be balanced as much as possible. I'll pretty much do whatever it takes to maintain like healthy stress levels. I thought that was a really interesting article. Should we move on to our next question? Cool. This is a great question. Who came up with these? That was a really smart person. How do you connect long-term goals to daily runs? I love this question.
I love this question. I can't also
answer it first though.
Yeah. So, you know, this is something that we see like everyone struggles with. We struggle with. It's just like kind of part of being a human, is learning how to understand what you're doing each day fits into the, you know, the overall, like what we're going for. And so these, you know, instead of just like telling yourself, well, actually, so the framework I approach this from is that every single run is important. No single run is all that important, right? And holding that tension in your hands. You don't want to overemphasize any single run. No long run, no workout is the difference between you and athletic success, fame, and fortune, right? Like no one day at work is the difference between like me and getting a Pulitzer or whatever. It's the culmination of all those days. So what I like to do is to check in with myself before each run and reflect on these questions. What type of run or workout am I about to do? Why is this important at this stage in my training? How am I planning to engage in this work? What mental skills or attitude am I planning to focus on and develop today? So mentally reviewing the specifics of a run will really help kind of link what you're doing in the moment to that long-term goal. Whether it's, oh, I'm doing an easy day with some strides that way. And then you're saying, okay, I'm doing an easy day with strides. That means I'm solidifying my aerobic base while increasing my economy and efficiency. Great, got it. Today is important, but not too important. Let's go. That is the thought process that I start every single run with. You know, and just link what you're doing in the moment to that long-term goal. Maybe it's a half marathon and you're building speed, and you can reflect on this speed workout will help me get faster and get across that finish line a little more efficiently. Or it's a 50K and you're building strength for the hills. Make that connection in your brain. Illustrate for yourself why that run is important, but not too important.
I hate hill strides. And every single time I go to do them, I think I'm just going to skip this. No one would ever know. And then I think, wait, you're doing these because this is how you develop the neural pathways to help you be a better mountain runner. And then I do them. So that just is like so important.
When I do hill workouts or hill strides, I physically visualize a climb in a race that I'm going to do, right? So like when I'm out there doing 3-minute hill repeats, I'm like, okay, power line, I'm coming for you, right? Like the power line climb on Leadville, or, you know, we're training for the Telluride mountain run. I'll be like, okay, I know what it's like to run up that road to Bridal Veil Falls, and like, you know, I know I'm only doing 1 minute of hill work today, but gosh darn it, 1 extra minute is like going to help, you know, some amount getting up that really steep ass road. And just, you know, again, being like every little bit counts, nothing counts all that much.
Yeah. My coach once told me, oh, you know, hill workouts are just supposed to be really fun. And I was like, you know, I think if you're doing hill workouts right, they really freaking hurt. So not getting it, but you know what? I'm going to reframe how I think about it and like really attach, you know, my specific goal to each one of these workouts. And that's going to help me get through it.
Yeah. I love hill workouts because it's this really fun way where just, you know, running uphill for 20 seconds on a golf course. I'm like, this is how you become a mountain runner, right? Yeah. Just like 20 seconds at a time. I was not born to run in the mountains. I did a bunch of hill strides to run in the mountains. And, you know, and I think there's not just the physical component of that, there's also the mental component. So in terms of developing mental toughness, the secret is that there's no secret, there's no shortcut. Take advantage of that fact. And every workout is an opportunity for you to show up, in the words of Des Linden, new 50K world record holder. She views every run as just an opportunity. Show up, just be there, right? Like at minimum, be there. You know, and you're going to miss runs. Des Linden miss runs. We miss runs. It happens, but give yourself that opportunity to be amazing every day that you can. And then be clear about the skills that you're developing before you undertake your run or workout. That doesn't mean you have to like be obsessive and like be in the log like, okay, so when you say 4 by 1 minute strides, like what specific energy system does this target? You don't need like a super, some understanding is good, right? But you also don't need to be Steve Magnus to understand that like kind of what the intent of each workout is. You can be like, this is helping me develop speed and economy. You know, whether you're training for a marathon or 100K, those are excellent. That's an excellent thing to be developing. So really connect, like today is an opportunity for me to solidify, like, okay, I've got 6 miles, super easy. Like, yes, this is what's going to help me become an amazing 100-mile runner because I'm going to get out there and do 6 as easy as possible.
Do you think it's good to go into your workouts feeling like this is my VO2 max workout or this is my lactic threshold workout? Like, do you ever approach your workouts with that kind of like thinking?
No, I don't get that specific. I say today is an opportunity for me to get faster. Getting faster is important because I want to run 100 miles. Yeah. Or I'll say today is an opportunity for me to get strong on hills. It's important for me to get strong on hills because I love playing in the mountains. That's what it looks like for me. I don't need to be like, all right, today I'm going to go out and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to be committing angiogenesis, you know, even if I only sprout 1 extra capillary, today will be worth it, you know, but like, I don't think you have to totally nerd out about the training specifics. I just think you have to forge a connection that feels authentic and motivating to you. And I think that will look different for every athlete.
Yeah, totally. I definitely think that, at least for me, kind of separating the technical jargon from the workout itself is actually more effective, and using the space as how do I sink into this particular effort level and sustain this effort level? And I think sometimes the overthinking sometimes detracts from the quality of the workout. And so for me, by overthinking, I'm like, was that, 2 heartbeats faster, to get over that lactic threshold? Like, was I, so that kind of stuff, I think it brings you out of the moment when you're totally attached to these broader things, like in the way that you're mentioning. It gives you a much bigger chance to, I don't know, feel the workouts more, to be more there right now, to be present with each stride rather than to be hyper focused on your heart rate and all of these other things that are very connected to data points.
I think that can remove you from the process and bring way too much focus. For me, I lump my runs into like, okay, today I'm going to get out there. It's going to make me some combination of faster, stronger, braver, kinder. And those are the things that I focus on in my training.
Yeah. What do you think, Kylie?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're muted.
I switched it up. I went to Kylie.
It's okay. I was going to jump in, but please let Kylie go before me.
Sorry. In regards to, I'm trying to think what I would add to that. I personally try to use like in my own like home office space and things like that. I like to make posts for myself in regards to like mantras and outline like the why behind why I'm doing things as a personal reminder to myself to kind of like on that daily, if I'm struggling with something, I'm reminded of, oh yeah, this is like why I'm doing this. And then like I can see that long term more in the like short term. And that's another tip that I use with people that I'm working with on nutrition as well, is sometimes I think we really just want to like see those end results right away. And so just kind of having that daily reminder of like, okay, like I'm not going to get to such and such a goal in like 5 days, but this is like my why behind why I'm doing this. And it's just like kind of helps. I know mantras don't work for everyone, and they're not necessarily the most effective for each individual person, but I do think that assessing like what your why or reason behind why you want to achieve a specific goal, and figuring out a way to utilize that as your like constant motivator is a good thing to, or a good like strategy to use.
I think so too. Definitely. I think mantras and affirmations actually can take you really far. And I would go as far as to say that everybody can use them.
Research shows that finding a mantra that feels authentic to you boosts performance across the board.
There we go. You heard it here.
Again, as someone who like without this research would not be into like not my jam, like, but research shows.
Let's let Drew answer before he has to hop off the call.
Yeah, so I personally find it difficult to connect daily runs to long-term goals, because to me that is mentally exhausting to go day by day and then attribute what I'm doing in that moment to something that could be months away. And so something that I like to do, and maybe it would help y'all too, is instead go week to week. Like each week is its own small, tiny training block. And you know that you've got, let's say it's a year, you've got 52 of these weeks. And for me, that's a lot easier to process. Each week you've got maybe like your one speed workout or your one long run, and then you've got a couple rest days or whatever it is. But all of that culminates with your 7-day period. And then to look back at the end of a week and digest it then, and then you can attribute that 1 week, that 7-day span, to your long-term goal. And it just makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. Man, I feel like I'm the opposite. I attach mine to like very like, there'll be times when I'm out on a run, I'm like, should it ever happen that I get into hard rock, today's another brick in that wall. And like, that's not even something that's like technically possible. But it still motivates me because like for me it's all about like each day is a little chance to like open up additional opportunities for myself down the road. So like that way, if amazing things do come up, I do get to hop into a race, I do sign up for something, like I'm more ready because I've been attaching every single run, like even without a concrete idea, I've been getting out there, I've been stacking bricks. Like I got a big pile of bricks, just give me something to do with them. That way, it's kind of the opposite approach of like, occasionally we'll have athletes that email us and they're like, I'm doing a 100 miler in 8 weeks. Like, what can you help me do? I haven't been stacking bricks. And it's like, oh, it's better to have a bunch of bricks that like, maybe you don't know what you're doing with quite yet than like, sign up for something and then get there and you're like, oh God.
I think just to Drew's point, we all break down our training into smaller bits to make it more digestible. And in whatever way is most effective for you, you should, pursue that, whether it's one training block at a time, one week at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah.
If you can go even smaller, I think that can be even more powerful. But breaking things down, in general in life, if you break stuff down, it feels less overwhelming. So if you take one big thing, races are obviously, that's like our biggest thing as runners that we can look at. If you take a race and you break it down into like the smallest segments, it's like aid station to aid station, or mile by mile, or just getting to that next tree on the trail, breaking stuff down makes it easier. So when you're trying to connect your long-term goals to your daily runs, I think the more you can work at breaking it down into smaller increments, and attach each individual day to your why, I think the more consistent you'll be. But again, you've got to, take those small steps.
Yeah, I love Drew's quote. I think of every run as a drop in the bucket. Once the bucket is filled, I'm ready for my next bomb-ass race. Lots of buckets fill up the above-ground pool of ultra running. Wow, that is the best metaphor, best above-ground pool metaphor I've ever heard.
Above ground, that's epic.
So awesome. So Arkansas, I love it.
Well, Derek said that.
Oh, that was Derek, not Drew. Dyslexic man.
It's okay. Yeah, awesome. Well, I feel like we've only got 5 minutes left. So
oh boy.
Do you want to highlight your most embarrassing race moment?
I mean, like everyone has used themselves as a bathroom during a race. It's just a fact. I would say definitely like I had hyponatremia during Leadville and I had to pee once every 4 seconds. And like just so many people, I mean, I'm not, it's whatever. A lot of people who I don't know saw my butt for sure. It's fine.
Kylie, what's your most embarrassing race moment?
I was trying to think of this ahead of time, and I've been racing for so long, and I was like, what is an embarrassing race moment? I wouldn't actually say this is embarrassing, but similar to Zoe's story, I got actual hyponatremia as well in high school at the state cross country meet, and I 800 meters from the finish line, had to crawl across the finish line because I almost passed out. So that wasn't necessarily a good, funny, embarrassing thing, but that was the one thing that stuck out to me because I was like, I don't know, I haven't necessarily had anything super crazy happen on a run, I guess. But what about you, TJ?
I throw up at every finish line, basically.
Like the third time we hung out, I crewed TJ, barely knew this guy, but was like, I want to get to know him. Crewed him in a race, spend my whole day trying to help him out. I get to the finish line. Does he say thank you? No, he does not. He barfs everywhere for 30 minutes.
I throw up and fall in every single race I run. I've just embraced it. Doesn't even feel embarrassing anymore. If I get to the finish line and don't throw up, I don't know. Maybe I didn't go hard enough.
That's a literal. I think
we celebrated the one race that I didn't throw up at.
Yeah. We decided that was a good thing and we validated it.
Not throwing up.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not paying attention to nutrition out there. It's just I run through the finish line very hard.
Yeah.
And often that leads to throwing up.
Yeah.
Every second counts when you're trying to take down that course record.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I didn't throw up at Big Athens.
No.
Well, that's pretty epic. I face planted in front of 10 people at the North Face 50 after I passed all of them. That was awesome.
Oh man. All my Leadville, best day of my life. At one point I was coming through the most populous aid station at Twin Lakes. And I just had this probably the first early sign of hyponatremia. I was like, you should look really cool. You should turn your hat around backwards like that. Then you'll look like an ultra runner. So I'm trying to go down this really steep hill while turning my hat around backwards. And then I fall right in front of the La Sportiva festival booth where all the photographers are.
Oh God.
And so
Classic.
I did not look cool, even though my hat was at that point backwards. But I tried. Just a very flawed, that's what it's like to be inside my brain during a race is definitely you should turn your hat around backwards. That's the key to athletic success here.
Oh God, there's so many dumb things happen at races. At Athens, they started everybody staggered starts, and I was coming down this hill and I passed all these people because they were a little slower. And then I completely ran off the whole course, just ran the wrong direction, missed the turn. And then they all had to yell at me to go back, hey, where are you going, you idiot? It's I don't know. I'm tractor beaming to that finish line. Oops. All right, cool. Thanks for bearing with us on a tired Friday. I'm really looking forward to my day off tomorrow, and I might not even run. Could be an opportunity for an extra rest. Who knows?
One last ski day.
I don't have to ski tomorrow, which is going to save me 8 hours of continuous activity. But I do have to do that on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to Monday's call already. We might be doing a call on environmentalism on Monday, assuming we can get our things together. Anyways, have a great weekend, and
Happy Friday, you made
yeah,
it.
enjoy your weekends. Take some time off.
Yeah.
Some time off. That's what I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
And goodbye. We'll see you next week.